Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's Word Study. Today we're talking about the holiday we all know as Thanksgiving Day. And I'm here to tell you, like all the holidays most of us are familiar with, these are holidays really supported by and adopted by the world, and usually adopted by religions, like the Catholic Church, in the interest of taking traditional worship of false gods and modifying them somewhat to reflect the religious doctrines of churches to bring in more converts. Now, we've all grown up with Thanksgiving, big family holiday, and have a lot of fond memories, family and so on. So nobody wants to give these things up. And the excuse that most people use for justifying the celebration of Thanksgiving is pretty much the same as their rationalizations for celebrating Christmas and Easter, which goes something along the lines of, well, it's just a time of giving thanks to God for what He has provided for us. And most of those who observe these pagan holidays don't have any intentions of honoring false gods or demons, but nonetheless, unknowingly, they observe traditions that do exactly that. Traditions that honor false gods and or demons, instead of doing what we all really want to do, and that is to bring esteem to Elohim, to worship Elohim. All churches expect their parishioners to be in church on the holidays in the interest of keeping the day holy. They explain that the word holy literally means set apart, and that meaning for religious observance, that is to say, for parishioners to attend church. But as I pointed out in a recent video, the word holy finds its roots in the worship of the great Hindu spring festival held in honor of Krishna, the spring sun god, as well as a personified woman called Holi, H-O-L-I, who tried to poison Krishna as a baby. So even the words holy and holiday, holy day, all by themselves automatically bring esteem to false gods and demons, certainly not to Elohim. Now, many believe that since Thanksgiving Day is not from pagan times, it's okay to celebrate it. However, as you will see, that is simply not the truth. And the Word commands us to not conform to the ways of the world. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Do not be conformed to the ways of this world with its superficial values and customs, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind through Yahweh's Word. The world sets up its own so-called holy days, and it's all based on money, promotion of product sales, and Satanic rituals which have been disguised and incorporated into Christian religious practices. Thanksgiving Day is not a day ordained or authorized by Elohim, and yet it is considered by many who say that they love Him to be a holy day. Now, what kind of a witness to Elohim does anyone give when they observe days that He has not ordained, and worse still, days that they pass off as being His? Isn't this how the Pharisees acted when they made up traditions that went against the Word and proclaimed that their traditions were of Elohim? Please realize how silly we sound when we tell someone not to keep Halloween, Christmas, or Easter because they're pagan, but that it's all right to celebrate Thanksgiving. For those of us who are learning to exchange the world's holidays for Elohim's Kodesh feast days, found in Leviticus 23, please consider this. Churches proclaim Thanksgiving to be a holiday, a holy day, for the purpose of giving thanks to God for the many blessings we've received, especially agriculturally. But that's exactly what Yahweh commanded we do for the 7 days of Sukot. So why do we celebrate Thanksgiving and not Sukot, when Thanksgiving Day is an outright copy of Sukot? Satan, the counterfeiter, has struck once again. It's no wonder why the majority of those who love Elohim don't keep the days he has designated. It's because they've been deceived by Satan, the one who is in charge of the things of this world. And for those of us whom Elohim has called out of the world, this ought to be something to give some serious thought and prayer to. Most history books would like to convince us that Thanksgiving Day goes back to Plymouth Rock in the 1600s, but Plymouth Rock was not the first Thanksgiving Day. Have you ever wondered why Canada has a Thanksgiving Day of its own? This pagan feast day, which gives esteem to the agricultural gods, goes back thousands of years. Originally, Thanksgiving Day was a harvest festival, and while its purpose has become less specific, the festival still takes place in late autumn after the crops have been gathered. And it may very well be that this is an outgrowth of the harvest home celebrations in England, celebrations of very ancient origin, being nearly universal among primitive peoples. Notice the wording of the Pilgrims. The first Thanksgiving in the New World. Not simply the first Thanksgiving, but the first in the New World. In other words, they're honoring a Thanksgiving festival that they were accustomed to in England before they came to America. It's the first Thanksgiving in the New World. And it was not just a feast. There were prayers and sermons and songs of praise that lasted for 3 days. In 1789, the Protestant Episcopal Church in America announced the first Thursday in November as a regular annual day for giving thanks. But it wasn't until 1888 that the Roman Catholic Church formally recognized the day, just as they've done with all the other demonic practices in the interest of gaining new converts. In ancient times, the Greeks honored Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, with a 9-day celebration. The Romans honored Ceres, and Anglo-Saxons rejoiced with a feast to celebrate the reaping of the harvest. Thanksgiving is a sports holiday, a religious holiday introducing the Christmas season, and a civil holiday. Most offices and shops are closed. Pilgrims and Indians, turkey and pumpkin pie are so much a part of the American tradition that it's hard for us to realize that the beginnings of Thanksgiving go back not only to the old world, but to ancient times. The Pilgrims frowned on all the holidays of merry England and refused to celebrate even Christmas because they knew of its pagan origins. In proclaiming a day of thanksgiving after the crops were gathered, and before winter set in. They may have taken a hint from the first covenant, commonly called the Old Testament, nothing old about it. But they certainly did not know that they were acting in a tradition which went back to ancient times. In the most ancient of days, all people who grew grain gave thanks at harvest time to the beings who had given them their daily bread for the hard winter months. Moreover, these ancient farmers sensed, in the changing seasons and in the cycle of seed to plant to seed again, the miracle of death and resurrection, and turned their wonder at it into legends, in effect, into the doctrines of demons. And even before biblical times, the ancient people of the Mediterranean basin held festivals at harvest time in honor of the Earth Mother, Mother Earth. The goddess of corn was always one of the most important deities in the hierarchy of the gods, and her child was the young god of vegetation. The ancient Semites called the Earth Mother Astarte. The Phrygians called her Semele. The Minoans had an Earth Mother for each district, and all these deities were absorbed by the Greeks into one great goddess, Demeter. It's a pretty common thing. Gather them all together, change it in, focus it on this one so you can have converts and get them all into your belief system. Satan's work. Also, the benevolent Earth Mother blended with the equally benevolent mother of the Messiah, Miriam, commonly known as Mary. And you've seen Satan imitate the mother Mary with her child, Isis and he's always imitating things to deceive people and so on. Anyway, as I pointed out in my recent videos about Halloween and Christmas, demonic deities are always fused with Christian tales of saints to provide patrons for villages, and so the white-robed goddess of grain lived on in various guises. Even today, pagan belief in the Corn Mother still survives among peasants in many parts of Europe, and the Pilgrims undoubtedly brought such beliefs with them when they came to the New World. Long before the Pilgrims held their first Thanksgiving dinner, harvest festivals were observed in this country. Among the North Dakota tribes, the corn spirit was known as the old woman who never dies. In Peru, the ancient Indians worshipped the mother of maize and tried every year to persuade her to bring in another good harvest. In Europe, the Austrians also had a corn mother doll fashioned from the last sheaf of grain cut in the field and then brought home to the village in the last wagon. Note that the Corn Mother doll was fashioned from the last sheaf of grain cut in the field. Elohim uses the first sheaf to dedicate the forthcoming crop. Look at Leviticus chapter 23, verse 10. While Satan draws attention to the last sheaf for next year's crop. And Yeshua is the first fruit, or the first sheaf, of the resurrection from the dead. 1 Corinthians 15:20. However harmless harvest rites may seem to be today, they are a relic of the great drama of the season when the fruits of the earth were collected and the means of life ensured for another year, and the thankfulness had a hidden stratum of cruelty. The leading role in the drama was taken by Ceres, the Roman corn goddess. Sometimes she was simply the stalks of corn, and sometimes she was represented by a sheaf dressed in many colored clothes, which were decorated with flowing ribbons and the finest lace. Whatever her form, She dominated the banquets, harvest suppers, and merry-making of early times. Remember the wicker horn basket holding vegetables and fruits? Yeah. Her spirit was believed to dwell in the corn. And, just like with Halloween, they did the pumpkins or whatever, and they believed that the spirit of the demon dwelled in that. So, another common theme with satanic rituals. It's really like witchcraft. Anyway, her spirit was believed to dwell in the corn, and mortals shirked the responsibility of cutting her down. So, often the act was left to chance. All those who were present would throw their sickles at the lone sheaf from a respectable distance, and so no one could be said to have deliberately performed the act. In the depths of folk memory, there was still the awareness of the death and resurrection cycle and the vegetation deity of the remote past. Remember, Cain was rejected for worshiping Elohim with vegetation. People always say, "Ooh, what's wrong with that?" Pay attention. This, vegetation god needed to be propitiated by a human sacrifice. Remember how Cain slew Abel? Satan's stuff goes all the way back, and in deceptive ways all the way forward to today. Then when the feast was over, the kern baby was taken to the farmhouse and kept there until the next harvest supper, and the symbol of the previous year's harvest was ceremoniously burned in the farmyard. This so-called kern baby is by no means extinct and can be seen in some churches as part of the harvest festival decorations, though she's been divested of her powers, I guess. At Little Waltham in Essex and Halton in Northumberland, for example, kern babies are attached to one of the pews. Now, certainly, most people don't follow such rituals, yet does that make Thanksgiving Day right for us to observe? Is it acceptable to celebrate Christmas as long as we don't have a tree or Yule log? No. For Yahweh would not have his people to cling to any vestiges of practices that portray gods or spirits in food to be worshipped. And we, who are coming out of worshiping Yeshua in the ways of the world, do not need to cling to a poor copy of what our Elohim has given us in Sukot. Yahweh answers whether or not man can make his own religious days in counter-distinction to his, whether in ignorance or rebellion. Look at 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 33. Jeroboam went up to the altar which he had made in Bethel on the 15th day of the 8th month, in the month which he had devised in his own heart, in defiance of Elohim's commandments. The picture is very clear. We should never ignore the word which tells us that Jeroboam made a substitute festival which would occur a month after Sukkot, the very same time that we observe Thanksgiving. Might it be possible that Jeroboam was instituting the celebration of Thanksgiving? He had lived outside the land of Israel in the days of King Solomon and had come into contact with the pagan celebrations of the people in Egypt. Look at 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 40. Was he perhaps borrowing from them? It is Satan who copies Elohim with the intent of leading Elohim's people astray. The prophet Daniel spoke of Satan changing the times and the law. Daniel 7:25. Thanksgiving Day was not acceptable to Elohim 3,000 years ago. How could it be such today? Any true believer in Yeshua will naturally want to be Kodesh, separating themselves from all pagan days and walking in the way of the Elohim of Yisrael, Israel. He's called us out of darkness into His marvelous light, and when we celebrate His Kodesh days, we reflect His ways to the world. And conversely, when we celebrate pagan holidays, we present a distorted and perverted picture of the one which is truth. Remember, you cannot take that which is Kodesh and that which is profane and mix them. That which is Kodesh, in this case, is Sukot. That which is profane is Thanksgiving Day. In the first covenant, we see that Moses, gave instructions to the Hebrews for the celebration of their harvest festival, which was called Sukkot, also known as the Feast of Booths, also known as the Feast of the Ingathering, also known as the Feast of Tabernacles. Sukkot is Yahweh's seventh and final moed. Takes place on the 15th day of the month of Tishri, 5 days after Yom Kippur in September or October. Look at Leviticus chapter 23, verses 39 through 43. Yeshua observed Sukkot every year of his life, and with good reason, because he gave it to his people Israel as a reminder of the food he provided for them in the wilderness, known as the present harvest, and the spiritual harvest to come, when Elohim would feed his people from his beloved bane, Yeshua. However, since Sukkot is already behind us at the recording of this video, and since it would take a whole lot of time to explain, I won't be going into it in today's study. But I will cover it in full detail well before it comes up next year, Abba willing, of course. I hope you'll pray about this, my friends. I know Thanksgiving, like Christmas, is an unusually treasured and traditional family holiday, which no one wants to give up. I understand the complications involved. And once again, Hanukkah is a great opportunity to deal with this complication, because, Hanukkah is all about fighting for your religious freedom. And if you look at my previous video about Christmas, I talk a bit about Hanukkah. And fairly soon, I'm going to do another video with more details about Hanukkah, and I'm going to show you how to light the Hanukkah, that's the 7-sticked candelabra. I'll show you the whole process of lighting it each day for 8 days. So, I understand that this is a difficult problem. But, we're talking about your eternal relationship with Elohim. We're talking about making Elohim number one on a list of one in your life. We're talking about being pleasers of Elohim, not being pleasers of men or family or the world, friends. And we're talking about the way that you pitch your tent with Elohim, or not, and the way he pitches his tent with you, or not. So, we're in the last minute here, my friends, on planet Earth. And Abba is delivering messages to those whom he is calling. And he's clearly saying, look, you want me to pitch my tent with you? You want to pitch your tent with me? You have to separate yourself from the world and the ways of the world. And you have to turn to me and to my ways. And mind you, we do not want to get into works, you know. You don't want to start, let me learn all the feast days and how they're done, and, make notes and make sure that you do it because you don't want to be left out of the Nechatef, or the kingdom, the Malchut of Elohim. He's not going to honor your works. You are not going to get his favor by performing for him. That is never what I talk about on this channel. What I'm talking about is you calling out to him, telling him that you have concerns and maybe you're confused about certain things, but that you want to honor him and that you do not want to conform to the ways of the world. Talk to him about it, not to others. Talk to him about it in prayer and ask him to show you the way, and know that he will. And that is our study for this week, my friends. As always, I hope and I pray that this study is a beracha to you and to yours. I know it's a difficult one, but it can be a big beracha as well, and that's what I hope and pray for. And, as always, Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. Until then, shalom, my friends.
Now 2,000 years have gone by, it's another working day. Some would rather let it lie, but the question still remains.